The story the world thought was over has just exploded back into the spotlight. In a stunning late-night revelation, the United States Department of Justice released millions of secret files connected to one of the darkest scandals in modern history, the case of Jeffrey Epstein. We're talking about 3 million pages, 180,000 images, and 2,000 videos, quietly uploaded, yet loud enough to shake governments, royal families, and powerful elites across the world. This release came after months of pressure, and 6 weeks after a legal deadline was missed, a deadline signed into law by former US President Donald Trump, forcing full transparency in the Epstein case. According to the Justice Department, this was the final and most complete disclosure ever made. And what's inside? Psychological evaluations, prison records, details of Epstein's mysterious death, and thousands of emails connecting him to some of the world's most influential figures. At the center of it all, his longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell, now serving time for helping traffic underage girls. But what shocked investigators the most were the names. The documents expose a network that stretches far beyond Epstein himself, revealing communications with royalty, billionaires, politicians, and celebrities. One name stands out immediately. A man referred to only as the Duke. According to the files, this individual exchanged emails with Epstein discussing private dinners, exclusive meetings, and even introductions to young women. The emails, signed Her Royal Highness Duke of York Kilogram, allegedly belonged to Prince Andrew, years after Epstein had already been convicted of soliciting a minor. And that's where the story turns darker. Because these messages weren't rumors. They weren't leaks. They were official documents, released by the US government itself. Even more disturbing. One image included in the files allegedly shows the former prince in a compromising position with a woman, raising fresh questions that royal officials have long tried to bury. And yet, this is only the beginning. Because as investigators dug deeper into the files, they uncovered emails that suggest Epstein's influence stretched even further, into elite social circles, business empires, and private royal conversations. The newly released files didn't just reopen old wounds. They ripped open a sealed chapter of royal history. Deep inside thousands of emails, investigators found repeated references to a man called the Duke. But this wasn't some anonymous title. The messages, tone, and even the signature made it chillingly clear. They were connected to Prince Andrew, son of Queen Elizabeth II. One email stood out immediately. It described a private dinner at Buckingham Palace, noting there would be lots of privacy. Another message contained an even more disturbing offer. Epstein suggesting he could introduce the Duke to a 26-year-old Russian woman. And the timing, these emails were sent in 2010. 2 years after Jeffrey Epstein had already pleaded guilty to soliciting a minor. That's what made investigators pause. Because Prince Andrew had publicly claimed he had cut all ties with Epstein in 2008. But the emails told a very different story. Then came the photo. A disturbing image buried in the files appears to show the former prince kneeling over a woman on the floor, an image that instantly reignited global outrage. The documents do not directly accuse Prince Andrew of a crime. But they contradict his public statements, raising serious questions about what he knew, and when, and it didn't stop there. More emails surfaced, this time involving Sarah Ferguson, Andrew's former wife. In one message dated April 2009, she writes affectionately to Epstein. "My dear spectacular and special friend Jeffrey, I am so proud of you." She signs it, "Love, Sarah, the redhead." At the time, Epstein was already under house arrest. The email even discusses business ideas. A possible meeting in Palm Beach. showing how deeply Epstein remained connected to elite circles even after his conviction. And then came another bombshell. Hundreds of references to billionaire entrepreneur Richard Branson appeared throughout the files. In one 2013 email, Branson casually writes to Epstein, "Really nice seeing you. Anytime you're in the area, would love to see you. As long as you bring your harem." A single line, but one that sent shockwaves across social media. Because by then, Epstein's reputation was already known. Yet doors were still open. Invitations still sent. Friendships still alive. And the most chilling part, none of these emails were hidden. They were sitting in government archives for years, until now. By the summer of 2019, the walls were closing in. Jeffrey Epstein had been arrested once again, this time on federal charges of sex trafficking minors. Unlike before, there would be no secret deal. No quiet settlement. No escape. He was locked inside the Metropolitan Correctional Center, MCC, in New York, a high-security federal jail meant to hold the most dangerous inmates in America. And that's where the story takes a dark turn. According to newly released DOJ files, Epstein was placed under suicide watch, then mysteriously removed from it just days later. His cellmate transferred out, the guards assigned to monitor him. They later admitted they fell asleep and falsified records. The cameras outside his cell, they malfunctioned that night, and on the morning of August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead. The official ruling, suicide by hanging. But the newly released psychological reports raise serious doubts. Documents show Epstein was in high spirits, discussing legal strategies, preparing defenses, and even planning future moves just days before his death. One report states clearly, the subject does not present as suicidal. Yet somehow, he died alone, unwatched, in one of the most secure facilities in the country. The DOJ files reveal internal confusion, missing footage, and unanswered questions, fueling what would become one of the most controversial deaths in modern American history. And then came the aftermath. Within hours of his death, Epstein's case collapsed. No trial. No testimonies. No names publicly exposed. For many, it felt less like an ending, and more like a cover-up, but the story didn't die with him. Because buried inside these newly released files were communications that suggested Epstein believed he was protected, that powerful people would never let him face justice, and perhaps the most disturbing revelation. His associate Ghislaine Maxwell had warned people years earlier that if anything happens to Jeffrey, everything comes out. Now, years later, it finally is. As the Epstein files went public, something strange happened. No press conferences. No emotional denials. No loud defenses. Instead, silence, inside political offices, royal circles, and billionaire boardrooms. Phones rang non-stop. Lawyers were called. Statements were rewritten. And powerful names quietly vanished from public view. Because the documents didn't just expose Epstein. They exposed how protected he really was. According to DOJ records, Epstein maintained contact with influential figures even after his 2008 conviction. The emails revealed casual conversations, business discussions, and social invitations that continued as if nothing had happened. This wasn't ignorance, this was acceptance, and the most chilling part. Epstein knew he was untouchable. Investigators found multiple references suggesting he believed powerful people would handle any situation that arose. One internal note even mentions Epstein boasting that he had insurance information that could destroy reputations if released. Then came Ghislaine Maxwell. During her trial, prosecutors revealed how she carefully managed Epstein's world, arranging travel, recruiting girls, and maintaining relationships with elite contacts. But what shocked many was how limited the investigation into her network truly was. Despite dozens of names appearing in documents, only Maxwell was convicted. No mass arrests. No sweeping indictments. No full exposure, just silence. And then came the global reaction. British media reignited scrutiny over Prince Andrew, especially after emails contradicted his public claims of cutting ties with Epstein. The implication that Epstein's operation wasn't just criminal. It was protected. Protected by influence. Protected by wealth. Protected by fear. And as journalists began connecting the dots, one conclusion became impossible to ignore. Epstein didn't die with secrets, he died because of them, which brings us to the final act. Because now that the files are public, now that the names are out, now that the world is watching, the question is no longer what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. The final DOJ release was supposed to bring closure, a full stop to one of the darkest scandals in modern history. Instead, it did the opposite. It raised more questions than it answered. Because buried inside millions of pages were signs of something far bigger than one man's crimes. The documents confirm that Jeffrey Epstein was not operating alone, and never was. He moved freely. He traveled internationally. He mixed with royalty, politicians, billionaires, and celebrities. Who Epstein was really working for? Who protected him for decades? Why investigations stopped where they did? Why surveillance failed at the perfect moment? And why no one else has faced charges? Even now, some of the most sensitive names remain redacted. And some files still sealed.